there's something about the feeling of being unreachable that feels very calming to my nervous system. And then when I'm in that state where my nervous system is just like hanging out in the parasympathetic, it's almost like so much creativity comes through and so many downloads come through. And maybe because you're in a plane, you're like closer to God. I don't know. But it's like my channels just become so clear and I just am so creative. Like my best business ideas come when I'm on a flight, my best content. I just feel so inspired. Like poetry flows through me at like a rapid rate. I'm like, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm here for this.
Do you think it's because it's, I'm just curiously asking because I've heard many people say that they're very productive on a flight. Is it because we finally get a chance to kind of go, hold on, nobody's around me. I don't need to have a conversation. Like there are people around you, but you don't need to have a conversation. Yeah. You don't need to. And so it's almost like taking a shower, but without a shower.
Exactly.
You know how the best ideas sometimes come in the shower is like we have nothing to do, nothing to really do. And you go, oh, download.
100%. I wonder what it would be like taking a shower on a plane, you know, like Emirates.
Like 10 times the idea, like double it down. Yeah.
Like we got supercharged creativity going on right now.
Well, we all must fly, whatever. It's Emirates or whatever the airlines which have a shower in the first class. I don't know which one has it.
I think so. I think that's Emirates. Like you get a shower, you get like your own private butler, you get like a small puppy to play with, you know.
It's fun. So Sam, tell us a little bit about your backstory of how did you, is your focus of work still breath work or you focus somewhere else?
I'm like all in on that right now. You know, it's so interesting. 14 years ago, I was struggling with disordered eating, body image issues. I was a actress, stunt double dancer my whole childhood. Like I grew up in entertainment, you know, I grew up on either on a stage or in front of a camera. And so my whole world was entertainment, performance, all of that. And so that manifested as body image issues, always being in a fight with food, all of that. And I remember this was 14 years ago now. I was like 18, 19. I read Elizabeth Gilbert's Eat, Pray, Love, and she talked about going to Bali and finding this medicine man, essentially. And so I called my mom one day and I was like, Mom, I've tried like the therapy thing. I've tried all these things to get over this and like help myself with this. And I'm like, I don't know. I still feel like I'm constantly thinking I'm in a fight with food and I hate it. Like, what the heck? I'm like, I read this thing in this book. I'm like, I think I'm just going to go to Bali and figure this out, right? Typical. So anyway, I went to Bali. I literally found the guy from the book. And I remember just like getting on my scooter and like scooting through the roads of Bali. And a part of me was like, this is the best idea ever. The other part of me is like, what the heck are you doing? And I get there and he just grabs these like big long sticks out of his bag and just like starts poking my feet with sticks. And it's just excruciating. And he's like, get up. Because I was lying on the floor. He's like, get up. And I'm like, okay. He's like, you think too much. You need to go meditate. Right. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But at the time, meditation felt very excruciating because I just hated feeling and I hated being in my body. And the thought of that was just a lot. And so I would distract myself with exercising and being busy and all of that kind of stuff because feeling was just, ugh. So anyway, I got back on my scooter and I went to this meditation school studio. There was no meditation, but there was breath work. And I looked at the community board and I was like, what is that? Right. And this was 14 years ago. It's cool now. Like people are like beginning to know what it is now, of course. But back then I was like, I don't know what this is. I walk up to this class and there was this guy dressed all in white. He looked like Jesus. And he goes to me and he's like, are you ready to go on the ride of your life? Like you're going to feel all of these emotions and you're going to release. And the two things that I could feel back then were like, I was like either like kind of numb or feeling anxious. I didn't really have this wide range of emotionality that, you know, that you're supposed to have. So anyway, I started doing this breath pattern that he taught. And within a few minutes, I was feeling alive again. I was feeling back in my body. I was feeling in my heart. My mind for the first time felt clear. And I was like, what is this? This is magical. And it like planted this little seed in me. And I was just a student of the work for like 7-8 years. You know, I'm just like doing it every single day and loving it and taking every training I possibly could. And then, 2017, I was like, I want this to be like my thing. You know, I feel this call to like bring this to the world and show people, not even show people, it's like give people an experience of their infinite potential through their own body, through their own breath. And that's been the thing ever since.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And what was so distinct about breath work and so different than meditation?
There was something about the act of really doing something in order to land in a state of beingness. Whereas with meditation, you know, we're sitting there and there is an element of it being active. But for my ADD busy brain that didn't like to feel and be still, it was very challenging. And so there was like a barrier that I was able to overcome with breath work because it was like more of this active practice, like there's a doingness to it, and that doingness drops us into the beingness. And there was something about that for my particular system. Maybe it's because I have a lot of fire, maybe it's because I have a healthy dose of ADHD, whatever it is, but there was something about that was able to break me through all of those protectors that didn't want me to feel. And from that place, now I love meditation, but only after I do breath work. Like I'll do breath work and I'll get into the place of, you know, the stillness and the quiet. And then from there, my meditations are so much juicier and so much longer and so much richer. Yeah.
Beautiful. What I've found with breath work or with creative visualization, and I practice all of the different formats of practice. I don't teach any of them. But what I found is there is it depends on, like you said, you call it ADHD. I just call it active mind.
Yeah,
it's just like it's the place you're at mentally as a human being, and you can go between very active stages to not so active stages. It's easier to get into a meditative state when your mind's not so active. Because when your mind is active, which tends to be the truth of pretty much every entrepreneur, because they have a deep sense of purpose and meaning and direction in life that they're chasing. And because of that, they have high activity in their brains. I'm sure if you brain map them, that would be absolutely true. It is going to be impossible for them to say, oh, from really active, drop straight to nothing.
Yeah.
It's not possible. You have to find a path to nothing. And I think breath work, creative visualization is another one that helps you use that mental faculty or body faculty, however you want to call it. I think breath work's a lot more body than mind, I guess. But for creative visualization, it'll be take your mental faculty and don't like try to focus it on your breath, but just simply let it be and watch it.
Yeah.
And you get to a place where you can be still.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I love that creative visualization.
Yeah.
And there's like this experience of, you know, getting your body aligned to that. And it's really about like our ability to like energetically and mentally focus and focus on something that feels so aligned. And then once we're there, there's such energy richness there.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it just one thought leads to the other and it activates the energy in the body. And then it just feels so good. And then it's just like, beautiful.
Why do you think we all forgot about breathing so much as a society?
It's so simple and it's so innate that we just override the divinity in the simplicity. That's my answer to it. You know, even when, you know, I talk to people about Pause Breathwork. I talk to them about my company. They're like, breathing, it's just so simple. I'm like, what do you mean? And then I'm like, I'm going to give you an experience of it. And when we give people an experience of their own breath, they're like, wow, this is so simple yet so profound. And so there's breath work for survival, which most people are doing. We're just breathing to survive. But we've been given this incredible ability to breathe, to thrive, to remember who we actually are, to cut through limitations and illusions and move through all of our conditioning and all of our layers and all of our personality and get to that essence of who we are. And it's such a simple thing that we bypass it, right? It's like we've complicated the art of happiness. Happiness gets to be easy. We just have to allow it to be easy. And the greatest path in my experience that I found is through the breath. I can be feeling like a bag of balls, and within 3 minutes, through intentional breathing, I can feel incredible. And I can realize like that thing that felt so dramatic and chaotic 5 minutes ago is not a big deal.
Why do you think that happens?
Perspective. It's like when we touch and we glimpse the true essence of who we are, and we remember that energy, from that vantage point, everything feels so mundane, so little, so it's just whatever. But when we're caught in the consciousness of a smaller part of us, so if something arises in life, I like to say everything's content. Anything that happens, whether it's in my relationship or my business or friendships or whatever it is, everything in life is content for us to evolve. But when content arises and we get triggered and collapse into the consciousness of the content, then we're trying to fight it from the level of the mind and the level of the inner child, and we feel so defeated and frustrated. But when we have that content and we let it really impact us in a way that's like, ooh, that hurt, but we use the breath to allow ourselves to create spaciousness from the trigger, and we view it from a different vantage point, it doesn't feel so intense. It's like, it's literally just an email, or it's just a person that put up the wrong thing on social media. But when I view it from the consciousness of my inner child, it's a big freaking deal. Like, you should not have put that spelling mistake on that thing on, you know what I mean? But when I get into my aligned, powerful self that remembers who I am, it's like, no big deal. And then I can actually problem solve from a more energy rich and aligned place, which makes everything, of course, so much easier, especially as an entrepreneur. I feel like nothing has shaped me, grown me, broke me down, expanded me more than my business. Oh my gosh. Like, I really, truly believe that entrepreneurship, I know you have a lot of coaches in your community, coaches, this work is truly a container for our evolution before anything else. And if we view it like that, then it's not going to feel so personal and intense. It's going to feel sometimes like an honor. Like, I get to go through this challenging thing so that I can evolve, be a better leader, so that I can help more people and, advance my mission. If we view it as, oh, this thing is happening and all entrepreneurship is so hard and this sucks, we're going to be out of the game.
So context-wise, what I like to do, or what I like to bring to our coaches, they tend to be pretty aware individuals generally, just because coaching itself is you have to be a little bit aware to be interested, and at the same point in time, we try to bring attention towards why something works. If there is something that we're discussing that is more of a technique or a methodology or a technology, whatever that is, right? So my curiosity is from a place of, and it doesn't have to be scientific, it could be metaphysical. I'm okay with that, and the tribe's okay with that as well. Is there a reason why you found in your research, in your work, in your experience working with people, where you go, well, the reason why breath works or breath work works is X? As to, like, for example, for me, the experience around breath work has been, it has given me trance-like experience. Like, if I have to connect to so it's not scientific from the vantage point that I look at it, right? So for me, it's very much, I know the science behind it, but for me, the lived experience that I've had with breathwork is mostly, like, the most I've done is Kapalabhati, which is a very breath of fire, or whatever you want to call it. It's basically a yogic breathing practice. And that puts me in a state of super alignment with energy. I feel like I'm connected to the universe, and it's much easier for me to meditate post that. Or be in more connection with the universe post that. So that's the experience that I have most with. So that's like, I can explain that from a point of view of, here's why this works, because metaphysically what happens is we never really stop to take a breath, or we take really shallow breaths. This makes you take deep breaths really quickly, elevates the oxygen levels in your mind. It also disconnects you from all of the mental chatter that you have. And so it's easy for you to connect to the universe, because the universe was always there. You just never paying attention to it. That's my understanding of breath work, of my understanding of why breath work works for me. What is your understanding? Because you, of course, are way more qualified than me to talk about it. You've done 17 years of it. I've done maybe 17 months. So let's talk about with somebody who's real, who's had the experience. So what is it that you believe or you've seen to be true for your experience of to why it is that breathwork works for somebody?
We're able to find God inside of us. And that the term God has many, you can say life force, universe, infinite power, infinite potential. It's that isness that we all know exists and can sometimes be a little esoteric and out there because we can't actually see it. Even though God is in everything always, right? Breathwork is the most direct access we have to that without any substances. You know, I know people can feel that through plant medicine and various things that they do, but I always say you are the drug and we can access. So what we do then is when we use the breath, we're configuring to the essence of God inside of us. And when we feel that, there's this remembrance. I remember who I was before I came to this planet. I remember who I was before this name, before this personality, before wearing these clothes, before the titles that the world has given me and I've given myself. I remember who I was before that. And not only do I remember, there's a direct feeling of it. There's an experience of it. And when we touch into that experience, and we know that we can touch into that experience any moment of any day, there's this empowerment that occurs. And not this manufactured empowerment through the mind of like, I can do anything, but this true empowerment. It's this true alignment. And when we get to that place of true power, not distorted power or disowned power, but true power, we're able to access the part of us that we know is the truest part of us. And from there, when we're settling and we're resting in that energy, we're resting in that well-being, anything we do from that position is going to be amplified and people are really going to feel it. Like, oh, I'm really feeling the truth of who you are here through your words, through your actions, through your beingness, through your content, through your coaching, through your leadership. Like, I can tell you're not trying to do it, but you're just it. Mm-hmm. And that isness, godlike energy is, I believe, what we're all here searching for through the various things that we do, you know, and we don't have to use the term God again. We can use the term life force or whatever it is.
Whatever that anybody wants to call it.
Whatever you want to call it. We all understand
there is something beyond us.
There is something beyond us that is within us. It's beyond us and it's within us. Mm-hmm. And when we acknowledge and can experience that isness within us, it gives us an incredible amount of confidence to do what we're here to do.
Mm-hmm. And how's your journey been? You train individuals in the practice of breathwork, right?
I train people to become breathwork facilitators. Yeah, that's what our company
What has
does.
been your experience been working with individuals, training them in such methodology?
It's the most fulfilling thing in the whole world. You know, my fiance said to me a couple of weeks ago, he's like, if you could do anything, like clean slate, what would you do? And I was like, exactly what I'm doing now. There's something that comes alive in people when we teach this work. I remember I was running a retreat right when I got certified back in the day. This was probably a year. This is probably like 13 years ago. And I remember the first ever breathwork experience that I taught was at a retreat up in Canada where I'm from. And I just remember teaching breathwork and seeing people go through their beautiful experiences. And it was like this feeling of like, I've done this before in another lifetime. You know, I've done this before. There's this remembrance. And I feel like the people who are called to breathwork, the people who are called to somatic healing and really using the body as an instrument for transformation, I believe that we decided to do this work before we even came here. And so there's this feeling there was this feeling for me of like, this is the most fulfilling thing. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And I see that in my students, you know, when they get in the seat of the facilitator and they're teaching this work to someone who's never used their breath as an instrument for transformation before, both people just come alive, right? It's this beautiful co-nourishing relationship where the facilitator feels so alive because they're aligned in what they're here to do. And then someone is remembering how powerful they are. And that co-nourishing relationship is just one of the most beautiful things.
Beautiful. What was the experience of becoming a facilitator and then going out building a business around it? So you're from Canada, like you mentioned. It's been about 13 years. You said yours was the first workshop that you ever did. What was if you were to dial it back 13, 14 years ago?
Yeah.
How was that? Starting a company, starting a business?
There's two distinct moments that I'll share that are really going to answer this question. So the first breathwork session I ever did was a 3-hour breathwork session in Bali. And a 3-hour breathwork session for the first one you've ever done, that's a little intense. Like, I wouldn't recommend that. It's a very activating, intense process, right? And I remember awaking from that experience. I was lying on the wooden floor and I just had tears everywhere. My face was all flushed and red. And I remember like waking up from the experience and looking at the guy who was teaching, and I was like, why does the whole world not know we can do this? Like, there's a part of me that was pissed. I was like, there's so much addiction, suffering, pain, like anxiety, depression in the world, and people don't realize this is not mainstream. Like, what is going on? What? And I just remember him looking at me and he's like, maybe you should go tell them. Like, that was so simple, right? And that planted a seed. I was a student, as I said, of it for like 7-8 years. I did all the certifications, but I'm like, I didn't plan on teaching it. I didn't plan on building a business. I just wanted to do it for my own growth and healing. I was getting sick of my last company. My last company was called, I think I was running it when you and I first met, but Hungry for Happiness. And it was all about disordered eating, body image issues with food. I did not feel aligned with that anymore because it was so long ago. I'm like, if I have to talk about emotional eating again, like, I'm going to start emotional eating because I'm just over it, right? And I remember being at a mastermind up in LA, and I was driving down from LA back to San Diego where I live. And I'm like, all right, I love the journey of Hungry for Happiness. We helped thousands of people. We grew that company to multi-million-dollar a year, and it was so successful, great profit margins. But I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, it was just like a moment in time of like, I don't want to do this anymore. And everything just got really still and really quiet. There was no radio on. I remember just like listening to my own thoughts. And I was like, what's my next thing? And it dropped in so clear. It was like, you need to teach the world to breathe. And I'm like, what? And the next beat was, it's called Pause Breathwork. Like, I didn't think of it. It wasn't one of these things where I'm like, I think I should start a business. It was so weird. I went home that night and I was like, that's interesting. Breathwork, pause breathwork. Okay. I fell asleep. For the next 2 weeks, I woke up at 3:14, not 3:13, not 3:14. Don't know why. Don't know what that's about. And I was just getting like downloads or information of this business. And it was literally, I just felt like it was like, I don't know, use the word channel or whatever. I guess it was channeled right through me. And my living room looked like, it was crazy. There was just like whiteboards and just shit everywhere of this business plan. So it wasn't one of these things where I'm like, I think I should start a business of breathwork. It just kind of was like, this is the thing. Are you going to answer the call to this? And so I think of pause as this energy, this entity that needs to be in the world. And I feel like it came to me at a really beautiful time. And now I'm very grateful because it's deeply fulfilling for me to lead it. And I have the opportunity of training people to share this message and share this work and change lives. And it just feels really aligned. Yeah.
So the first business that you started was Hungry for Happiness, not necessarily Pause.
So my first business was called Liftify, where I helped personal trainers go from in the gym to online. So I helped people like start their online businesses, like fitness coaches. And then that was cool for a couple of years. I want
to know the journey of you starting a business. That's the curiosity I have. So tell me how you started.
Oh, okay. I was an entrepreneur since I came out of the womb. You know, like I come from a very entrepreneurial family. My parents are very entrepreneurial. They own a business together in food service. And my dad was a professional hockey player. And they always gave me the permission to just do what I want and follow what feels good. I was a terrible student. I was like, I just didn't care about math and science and shit. So I was getting like C's in school. And my dad was like, it's all right. He goes, the A students will end up working for the C students. And I just remember I remember that. And then when I graduated, I was like, all my friends were going off to university. I'm like, I'm not, that sounds terrible. I'm like, can I create my education through travel? And I asked, you know, I asked my parents at 18, can I create my education through travel? They're like, yeah, go for it. We're not paying for it though. I'm like, that's fine. I'll figure it out. You know, they never funded anything. They never gave me money for anything because the great thing about my parents is they really taught me the value of hard work. My dad was a professional hockey player and he did not let me win at street hockey unless I actually won. Like he would never let me win, not even a board game. My mom would be like, just let her win. He's like, no, she's gotta earn it. And so my parents always taught me the value of hard work and they always gave me permission to be an entrepreneur and do whatever I want. And so that was like, I'm so grateful for that. Because I don't think I would be here if I didn't have that. And I acknowledge that and I'm very deeply grateful for that. I've built everything on my own. Like they didn't give me anything, but still they gave me the permission and the container to fly, if you will.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah. And so I just remember always thinking to myself, how can I add value? How can I add value and what could I do? And so my first endeavors were in health or fitness, right? I was a fitness competitor and so did online training and did, you know, taught personal training in parks when I lived in London. I lived in London for 3 years. Did it back in Vancouver as well. And just that was my thing. And I always thought I wanted to be a celebrity trainer. And then I was like, I'm over that. And when I learned breath work and I learned, you know, the whole inner world and how powerful we are, I was like, that's way more interesting than being a personal trainer. And so
what was the hardest time as an entrepreneur?
Last year. You get to this place where it's growing pains, man. It's like when I was a solopreneur, that was easy. When up to 4 million, that was easy. Now past 4 to 8 million, it's just like a lot of moving parts. And I needed to learn how to be a really good leader last year. I'm great at leading a community. I'm great at leading my clients, but leading a team, I needed to go through a lot of work, right? It's like, wait, what do I do as I'm the CEO of Pause. So I'm like Googling, what's the CEO do? Like I have to learn all this. And I feel like last year I just kept falling on my face in different ways. And I was really hard on myself because I was, you know, I hired a lot of CEO mentors that were men. And so I'm like trying to do it in this way. And I'm like, nope, I gotta do it in my own way. And so last year was this calibration of realizing that it doesn't look one way. Here's the value that I'm bringing to the organization, but I get to do it in a very feminine way. And I don't have to do it in a very masculine way I've been taught. And so last year was one of the hardest years as a CEO, but one of the most amazing years for growth. But I feel like every stage has its level of hard, you know. I really feel like entrepreneurship is constant duality. You know, it's like right now in this moment, there's probably 100 things happening in my company that suck and 100 things that are amazing, you know, and it's like, what am I going to focus on and what am I going to give my energy to? I learned the power of energy over the last 3 years. My energy is the most important thing. And if I am depleted, operating from fear, operating from anything but my truth, my entire organization is going to feel it and it's going to have an impact on everyone. So I always say energy over strategy. You know, energy is the most important thing. How can I cultivate this energy of leadership and power and vision and heart and courage and work on myself and believe in myself? And, that's 80% of the work.
Mm-hmm.
That's 80% of the work for me personally. And then the 20% is the actual like tactical, tangible, right?
It's always the truth of any company, any large enterprise is after a point, it's not about what you can do. It's about who you can work with and how you work with them.
Yeah.
It's very little to do with even strategy, like you said. Strategy is the same eventually. It's nothing different than what is known probably by everyone right now. Like anybody that's listening to this knows exactly the strategy that you need to make your business work. The problem will be, will you actually be able to get it to work? And that needs, firstly, you, like you said, in the starting phases of your company, and then and eventual stages of the company, can you make it work with the team? And if you can make it work with the team, you've no upper ceiling. You could just keep going as far as you can find the right people, bring them in, keep the culture stable, get the right people, most importantly, and keep the right people.
Yeah.
To say, all right, this is the group of people that are the right people for this company, and they're different for every company. And then you keep going at it. And that's really, after a point, I feel like growing a company becomes about hiring than anything else.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
If you can hire, you got a company. If you can't hire, you don't have a company.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I was getting so bogged down over the last 5 years of like, what's the best use of my time? And I realized it's 3 things. I read a book called A CEO Only Does 3 Things. Culture, right? What's that? There's a quote. Peter, I want to say Drucker. I think that's his last name. Culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah, I think it's Peter Drucker. Right?
Yeah?
It's possible. Yeah.
Okay, so
sounds very Peter Drucker. So let's just say him.
I think it is him.
Screw it.
I think it is him.
Yeah. If not, now it is. Take it.
Remember when you said that, Peter?
Yeah.
So I've been working so much on culture, right? What's the culture of Pause? How can I want my team to feel so lit up that they work for a company and so happy that they're employed. So like, how can I better their lives just by working there? And so that's beautiful. And that's been so fun. So culture, people, right? People in the right seats, right? Going back to hiring. It's like, that is the biggest thing. I've made some terrible hires with bad boundaries. And I used to let people cross my boundaries a lot, and then it would create resentment. And then I want like the cleanest relationships energetically. And then numbers, right? What are the numbers that we're going for? And how can I be committed to that every single day? How can I look at it every single day? I went through this phase a couple of years ago where I was like, I'm a creator. I don't need to look at the numbers. And then I shot myself in the foot,
Well, and I mean, you can still create. There's just no volume in it. Like, you can't build a business without understanding numbers. You have to understand some numbers. It doesn't have to be the most complex things, which sometimes people make it to be, till the time you hire the right CFO, for example.
Exactly.
You hire the person that knows how to run the numbers and give you just the 5 that you really need.
Exactly.
And then you got it.
Then
You're good. You don't have to worry about it. Somebody that you can dance with.
Absolutely.
And saying, okay, I don't understand this. Can you make it like a 4-year-old?
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, talk to me like I'm stupid.
Yeah.
So now we have this amazing CFO, and there's like a relaxation in my nervous system of like I'm going to keep an eye on this, and I'm going to look at it every single day, not from a place of obsession, but being aware, like having a really healthy relationship with money. I think that's a big thing for early coaches, of like really dialing in our relationship with money, because it's the currency of everything that we do, right?
It's the way your value was valued and your worth was worth. And otherwise there's no way except for having some words being said about how great you were, which is also great, but it doesn't take care of the bills and doesn't really move you forward. So while that is awesome to have the gratitude of a lot of people, you still got to pay the bills. And so money is very important. What were some of the lessons that you learned about money?
So I think of money as a relationship. Receptivity and allowance. Like, can I allow myself to actually receive money? Right. And what does that mean about me? So it's like creating these shifting my identity around money. Like, I am someone who's really good at money. I am someone who attracts infinite amounts of wealth, right? And just having like a really clean relationship with money. So that's been huge for me, of like doing money energy work on a daily basis. It's like, if there's any kinks in my relationship with money, it's going to show up. It's going to come out, right? So how can I have like a really clean relationship and just graciously receive? Like, how can I be a gracious receiver and a generous giver and just have the flow of money in and out of my world be like seamless and exciting and fun? You know, like when I pay people, like be so stoked that I like, wow, I've created something where, you know, I get to serve people, and you know, it's like this is their livelihood. How cool, you know? And so that's been like a really big one of like not desensitizing myself to money, you know, like really acknowledging, like as we went from like, you know, I was a solopreneur and making not much. Now we're multi-million. It's like, how can I not like, how can I still acknowledge like, whoa, this is a huge deal. This is amazing. And just be so grateful for that. You know, I think gratitude is an amplifier of abundance. If we can be so grateful for every single dollar that comes in our world and be so grateful that we have the abundance to then circulate that abundance, that's been such a big game changer for me.
Yeah, that's so true. I think you hit it right on the head when you said a lot of people have a problem receiving money. They may have the skill, they may have the possibility, they might be smart as hell, they might have the right methodology, they might have everything. And if they have a trigger for when money is given, it's what I've found is usually they would almost immediately spend it.
For sure.
And on things they don't need.
For sure.
Like it is almost like it's an automatic. They're like, I don't deserve this. And they would question it, spend it, burn the client, do stupid stuff that you really don't need to do. And as a smart person, you would not do. But you end up doing it just because you have a challenge, because of the story that you might have told or your parents might have told or whatever the backstory to that is. But you just held on to your 4-year-old self or 10-year-old self or early teenage age and just holding on to that identity saying, oh, I don't deserve this. And I shouldn't be.
But do you know what's crazy? It's like, it's not just money with people like that. They can't receive anything, right? Like a compliment. How many people receive a compliment and right away they're like, I like your shoes too. Like, just take it in, you know, like take it in, let it land, like let yourself actually receive the abundance that the universe is wanting to give to us without deflecting it or like hot potatoing it right away, you know? And it could be the littlest things like favors, right? Anytime Eric asks to help me out with anything, I'm like, yes, like get like, yes. Cause I want to practice receiving and being gracious and grateful for receiving, because that helps my relationship to money. So when people have an inability to receive money, they have an inability to receive a lot of things, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I have a friend, and it's a joke that we crack with him. I'm not going to give the name away, but
tell us.
I can tell you later. But there's a friend of mine, and he is such a giver. Like if there was a scale of 1 to 10, he's like 11. Like always, like, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? And constantly, right? And the other day we were just talking about it, and I was like, you give to so many people. You can just reach out to like these 5 friends. Like I included myself. Like if I know what you want, I will do it for you because you've contributed so much to my life. You're a great friend. You're a great person overall. I would absolutely do this for you. But I need to know that you want this, right? I mean, how will I know? Like I'm not, I'm intuitive, but not that intuitive that I can read your mind, right? So I'm like, you have all these friends. This is what you want to build as your next career. He's trying to build his next career. Like if you never ask, they don't know that you want something and you will never have it. Even if you have all the access in the world. This is like a really well-connected person. If you know an influencer in personal development, he knows that person and knows them really intimately. So because he's such a giver, he's a very kind soul and he's amazing. And at the same time, he can't ask. And he can't ask. And even when I told him to say, okay, what can I offer you? He couldn't tell me back. And I was like, wow, that's where you're stuck. That's where you're like constantly battling, and you think the world is going to just, you're not going to receive anything if you never ask. There's no way of, like, there is no science of universe that I've ever heard about saying, you know, you just give, and one day you shall receive. I've just never seen, heard, or anybody share that lived experience with me of saying give, never ask. And you will receive. It's just not how this works.
Yeah, I feel that. In my experience working with my clients, it's like the fear of asking is the no, the rejection. So there's a book called Go for No, which helps rewire the brain. Like, rejection's a good thing. It's not rejection, it's redirection. You know? It's like, just go in for the ask. Who cares?
And I think there's an exercise that I like to do, which is when I'm going for an ask, I never go for the ask with the point of view that I have, but the point of view that they would have. Right?
Tell me more.
So it's more acceptable. So for example, if let's say you have a podcast and I want to be on your podcast, right? I wouldn't go in saying, Samantha, put me on your podcast, right? It would be more of, why should Samantha put me on my put me on her podcast, right? And so when I'm asking, I'm not asking for, here's why you should get me on your podcast. What I'm asking for, hey, Samantha, I heard your podcast. It seems to be talking about these ideas. You know what? I have this thing that may resonate with what you're talking about. See if this is connected to you. And maybe if it is interesting, you would let me know if I could be on your podcast. Now I'm doing two things in there. First, I am not operating from ego and that I deserve this. And so it's easier for me to do because I'm saying, hey, I know this is value to you. So I'm giving you something in a way while I'm also asking for something, right? So firstly, it's I'm not necessarily operating from a place of, you should respect me, because I am something, right? So it takes away all of that charge. I'm communicating in a way where you will go, oh, it makes sense or it doesn't make sense. But most importantly, because I'm not caring about my ego and because I don't care about what actually happens, because I'm not trying to serve me, I'm trying to serve you. No is just no to yourself. It's not no to me.
Absolutely.
It's like, I was like, oh, I connected it to her and she didn't feel it was aligned. So maybe it wasn't aligned and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's perfectly okay. That no is not really a no. That's just no for the idea that I presented. It's not a no to me. It's not a personal rejection. It's basically, like you said, a redirection. You can call it that, or you can simply say, and that's what I feel is a classic mistake in the ask, is most asks are, why you should do this
What's
for me.
What's in it for me?
You should do this for me.
Yeah.
I'm a friend, put me on the thing.
Yeah.
So that's the classic mistake, because let's be honest, people would do it, but they also resent it. Then.
Yeah.
They do it for you, and then they're like, why did I just did it because he was a friend or she was a friend, and I don't really care.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say, hey, this is why this will work for you, now that ask is so much more powerful.
Totally.
It's so much more, oh, wow, you actually listened to the bloody podcast instead of just showing up because you wanted to be on one more podcast. Right? So you actually know what I talk about. You're actually connecting the dots and saying, okay, good. So you also feel a little bit more like, oh, I would like to give to this person. They made some effort into this.
Totally.
Right? So for me, I feel like there's a lot of asking without thinking about how and what you're asking for, and not enough consideration that everybody, 100% of us, want to do things that we want to do.
Yeah.
We don't actually want to do things that somebody else wants us to do.
Absolutely. Because that just causes resentment.
Yeah. You might do it just because you feel like, oh, I have to do this favor and they did this for me, so I'm going to do this for them. And yes, you can cash in your chips like that, but when you cash in the chips where it's connected to the person, so much easier.
Absolutely.
And so much better vibe.
So good.
Yeah. And the person, when you're walking in, and let's say if it was a podcast ask, even then the person goes, oh, you know what? We talked about that thing. I actually have, for once, I know what I'm going to talk about.
Yes.
Instead of me trying to prepare, you prepared it for me.
Yes.
It's so much more easier for both the parties in a way. So I feel there's a synchronicity to that. There's a way you can receive more easily, especially when you're starting the journey.
Absolutely.
I've also found receive small things first. Like, don't try to go for the big, oh, I'm going to ask like this big ask straight away, because you're more likely to get a no, right? Because you have not practiced receiving. Start for a small thing, like somebody paying for a coffee for you. Take it.
Yeah.
And just say thank you. Compliment
like
that.
There you go. Yeah. And it's like dating, right? Yeah. Make many asks, aligned asks, and then if one says no, it's not like, oh, but if it's like the only person that you ask and you put all of your chips on this one table and then they say no, it's going to feel intense. Where it's like when you're dating many people, right? And one person falls off, you're like, it's fine. There's so many, we live in an infinite universe. There's so many different options. Yeah. And so just get yourself out there, have conversations, make those aligned asks, and then see how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why sometimes a lot of times I have the practice of, if somebody says, hey, great shirt, I'll say thank you. And I don't feel like I have to reciprocate that unless I actually do want to reciprocate it. And sometimes I've reciprocated really poorly because they're like, I'm reciprocating just because. And I'm like, that's terrible, Ajit. You're making a bad comment. It's not even the right thing you're appreciating, because you feel this pressure of, oh, I must not
Do people compliment your hat game all the time?
All the time.
I love that about you. I'm like, oh,
or they hate it. On social media, they love it or hate it. They go, the hat doesn't work on you. I'm like, thank you for your fashion advice, which I never asked for, but go for it. Like, why do you wear a hat? I was like, how does it matter to you? But sure, I love hats.
Why do you wear socks? Why do you wear underwear? Tell me that.
But that's social media, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, no kidding.
Well, Sam, how can people know more about your work?
So pausebreathwork.com has all of the things, the app, the facilitator training, my Instagram at Samantha Skelly. All of the shenanigans happen right there. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time. It was a pleasure talking to you again.
Yeah, thank you for having me.